Hi, I'm Lars Helegeson. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called 𝐒𝐭𝐮𝐤𝐞𝐧𝐭. We are a CRM and marketing automation software platform. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to use automation to scale your business. Automation is one of those things that it doesn't really matter how big your company is, whether you're a startup or a small business, midsize, or an enterprise. The automation part of running your business is very important. The more you can automate without losing touch with the customer experience, the better off you're going to be. You want to use machines. That's why we invented machines, so that you can use software or tools at your disposal to make things automated, so you don't have to have people doing the same thing over and over again. So let's talk first about what does automation actually mean, because a lot of us have different ideas. Going back to the original concept of the factories where they're creating actual metal machines, all the way to the modern era where you still have factories, of course, and robots that are making things. But then we think about automation in the context of our business. How do we actually operate our business using the tools that help us automate things like sales, marketing, and customer service? So to do this, we have to have an understanding of the basics of how do we think about automation when it comes to running our business. There are two main components that we have to understand. One is a trigger, and the other one is a workflow. A trigger is a thing that will set something off. So if we think about a trigger being some sort of environmental change that will create something to happen. So the trigger is the cause, and the workflow is the effect. So triggers can often be things like opening up an email, or clicking on a link, or visiting a website, or having a phone call that your salesperson receives, or someone fills out a form on your website. And these are all changes in the environment that contains your relationship with somebody. So then once that trigger happens, then what do you do? And that's the workflow part. So we think in terms of cause and effect. And when we boil down all of the fundamentals of what automation is, it comes down to this: a cause and an effect. So a large automation scheme where we think about automating the customer journey and how someone goes through the process of buying from you, we want to think in terms of all of these causes and effects, and then how do we chain them all together and create a system where we can fully understand what happens when someone buys from us. And then how do we automate certain things so that we don't have to have someone doing the same thing over and over again, or waiting or checking on something over and over again. We can use software and other tools to make sure that we're actually automating things in a way that makes us more efficient. So here's some examples. Like I mentioned, filling out a form, clicking on a link, visiting a website. And then there's this concept of lead scoring. So lead scoring is a little bit more of an advanced concept, but the idea is that you're gathering points based on behaviors that you're doing. So you may assign points to someone filling out a form, clicking on a link, or visiting a web page, and maybe each of those things is 5 points. And then if someone hits 15 points, meaning they did all 3 of those, then that means that they have hit the certain threshold, and maybe that will activate a workflow. So it's a good way of creating a method to identify people who are very interested in what it is that you're selling. So whether you have a product or a service, having a clear picture of what it is that what are people doing that's important enough to you that when they do those things, they want to activate something to happen, something special. So one example, like using this as an example, could be doing all 3 of these things where they accumulate, say, 15 points. Then that means that you're going to have automatically a salesperson is going to be scheduled to call that person. So it's a way to think about automation that connects not just individual things that people are doing, but several things that they could do. And if they do them, then what happens? You can also do things a little bit more manually. So you could say, while someone's working within your CRM or your contact database, if they change something from one to something else. So maybe they suddenly realize that this person is interested in this product or service, that could in and of itself trigger automation. And then you can also have workflows triggered automatically. So maybe you have a phone call with someone and someone says, yes, I would like to learn more about X, or yes, please send me this email. It may be more when they say, send me this email, it may be more than just sending them a single email. Maybe it's putting them into sort of a mini journey, or where they can receive that email and then you can automatically listen for what they do with that email. If they click on it, if they click through and they go to a website, or maybe they watch a video, all of those things can then potentially trigger other automation to follow up and make sure that the person has access to the information that they need, that your team is aware of what they're doing, and helping them close that deal. So workflows, this is the execution side of automation. One of the things that's very common is to get an alert. So maybe someone on your sales team needs to know when one of their leads is on your website. You can also automatically send an email, a text message, or a voice message to them. Maybe it's sending an invoice to them. Maybe it's scheduling activities like a follow-up phone call. Maybe you make changes to the contact record when they say you suddenly learn that they're interested in a particular product. Maybe you mark that on their contact record. And then the idea of opportunities, and maybe you create an opportunity. So opportunities are common in the CRM space as a term that represents a more complex, more involved sale. Usually these are higher value items. And you'll see these a lot more in business to business or B2B type sales environments, where someone will want to keep track of potentially a high value lead, walk them through the process of them becoming a customer, and then helping their management keep track of how many people are in their pipeline to make sure that they've got a sense of what their sales are going to be. So these are all examples of what automation can do from a workflow perspective. So what we really want to do is connect the dots between our customer journey map to our automation. So the customer journey map really is how we define how someone goes from learning about us to being interested in us, and then coming to the decision to become a customer, then becoming a customer, and then how do we turn them into advocates? So through that whole process now, we want to break that process down into these 4 elements. So really we have a start and a stop. And then in the middle, we have decisions that decide whether or not we're going to do one thing or another. And then we have some sort of a workflow. So here's a very, very simple example where someone gets put on a journey. They get sent an email. You wait some time. You look to see if they actually confirmed their sign-up form. So if they did, then you send them this email, and maybe you activate a different workflow. Otherwise, maybe you send them this email, you wait a little bit, look to see if they visited this website. And if they did, you go this way. And if they didn't, you go this way. Check again to see if they read or clicked on the email. And if they did, go this way. And if they didn't, go this way. So building in, and this is more tactical in the sense that you're looking for very specific actions. So this is a single contact moving through the sales process, and you're looking to see if certain things have been done or have not been done. And then how do you anticipate what those are? And then how do you automate the follow-up? So basically that's what we're trying to create here with our customer journey map, and translating that into this tactical journey. So part of the sales process isn't necessarily just sales and marketing. Customer experience also involves customer service. So when we look at this, we want to make sure that if someone has a question or an issue, especially if there's not customers yet, we want to make sure that we're there to help them. And so these are 3 key elements you want to build into your customer service functions. One is call management. Obviously, if someone has an issue, how are you going to handle them calling you? Especially if we're a small business, we don't want to relegate anyone who has an issue to just fill out an email or fill out a form and hope that we get back to you. Many people will expect to be able to call someone. So how do you track that? How do you manage those calls, seeing the number of calls, how long they are, what do they talk about, what's the general sentiment? Being able to track all of that, automatically link it to the contact as part of their record in their CRM, and making sure that you can refer to that at any point in the future. Live chat's another big one. For people that don't want to talk on the phone, having a chat function on your website is pretty key. Some way for them to reach out and effectively talk to someone about whatever issue that they're having. making sure that that chat transcript gets into the CRM. And then you may also look for different elements of the chat, again, sentiment analysis, and do something about that based on what happened in that chat. The last part is a support ticketing system. A ticket is effectively a case where you're opening up a case and keeping track of how that case is resolved. This could be additional communication with the customer. It could be internal, but keeping notes so that you know that this issue is open until someone closes it. And so what we want to do is make sure that we build these functions and any automation into this process so that if someone opens a ticket, it gets resolved a certain way. Maybe that triggers them to send, or triggers the system to send an email to the person automatically asking them to give a review on a website. So these are all ideas of how you can build automation into customer service, because the customer experience is more than just sales and marketing. What we really want to do is make sure that we see through the entire process so that the customer service, the sales process, the marketing process, all of these things are all linked together. And it doesn't stop when someone says, here's my credit card. It stops. It never really stops if you can avoid it, because you want to be able to continue to engage with your customers. You don't want to be annoying, but you want to make sure that when you follow up with them, you give them an incentive to amplify your brand. Make sure that they know that there's something in it for them. Maybe it's referring another customer and they get a discount code. There's some way to reward them for spreading the good word about you. So that's a big part of this post-sale follow-up. Another big part is by providing good customer service and an easy way for them to access someone, you're much more likely to turn them into brand advocates. That means that they will go out and they will spread the word about how great you are, how great their experience was. And a big part of that is making sure that if someone comes to you because they had an issue, if they were unhappy with something, that they feel heard. So when we think about all of those parts of the sales process, how can we then automate all of those elements so that maybe someone's unhappy, maybe you turn them happy, and then there's an automated sequence of messages that they receive that express your appreciation for the experience that they had with you. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that our discussion about automation gives you some ideas on how you can scale your own business. And of course, if you have any questions or would like to reach out with for any feedback, I'd be more than happy to communicate with you. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Have a great rest of your day.